Hello and welcome to the Global Church Project. I'm Graham Hill. Since 2010, Kenny Dhanabalan has served as the Executive Director of EFICOR. EFICOR is a national Indian Christian organisation engaged in disaster response, development and training since 1967. Kenny Dhanabalan has served among tribal communities and has vast experience in community development, disaster management and training various Christian leaders on integral and holistic mission. Aside from leading EFICOR, he serves on the pastoral team of Living Faith Cornerstone Community in New Delhi, India. His vision is to see India's poor experience economic, social, political and spiritual flourishing and liberation. Kenny Dhanabalan, welcome to the Global Church Project. You're the head of EFICOR. Can you tell me, what does EFICOR stand for?
EFICOR stands for the Evangelical Fellowship of India Commission on Relief. It's the sister concern organization of Evangelical Fellowship of India, which is a counterpart of World Evangelical Alliance in India.
And EFICOR works, I think, in 6 core areas. Can you describe to me the kind of work EFICOR does and what are the key areas that it's working in?
EFICOR started basically to facilitate the evangelical churches in India to be involved in social concern. So I take the first one as the capacity building. Basically, we train pastors, mission leaders, and elders on issues of justice, poverty, and make them to involve in addressing issues of social concern in our own country. In that, we offer short-term courses, anything between 2 days to 3 weeks, and a long-term one for almost 5 months. And we also offer a MA course, which is a distant education course in mission and development practice. And we also been involved in livelihood programs, basically for income generation for the poor farmers. So in developing the agricultural land and non-agriculture products which can be produced, and we also help them in alternative livelihood programs. We help them to link up, start self-help groups and link them to the banks so that they can access credits from the bank under the livelihood program. We also, as an organization which started as relief, so we continue doing relief operations wherever disaster happens in India, and also in disaster risk reduction and rehabilitation programs, which we do. That's the third one. The fourth one, which we do, is on mother and child health and nutrition. Basically, we comes under the health part of it, where we try to reduce the infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate, and we work along with government officials in building their capacities to address this issue. Also, under the public health, we work on the HIV and AIDS, motivating the church to be caregivers and giving them the hope. That's the third one. And the fourth one is on urban intervention. We work in urban locations, basically on livelihood and also education for children and the health component we look at. We are planning to involve in social housing in urban sectors, but that's in our future plans. The other one which we do, it is on climate change adaptation, where we get involved in working towards, along with Climate Action Network South Asia, we work along with them in addressing the issues of climate change. So those are major responses which we do with.
What long-term development projects does EFICOR do, and why is long-term development what EFICOR focuses on?
Most of our work, except for the relief operations which we do it, is a long-term program which we do it. Basically we work along with the community in organizing them and mobilizing them, and then get involved in other work. Like if at all I talk about infant child health programs, you can't just do it and leave it. It requires a lot of follow-up work which you have to take it up and do. So all our development programs, whatever we do it, is a long-term one rather than a short-term, because it requires a lot of community participation, community mobilizations, and study of the community which you require. And then it takes a long process for us to bring in a sustainability in the program. So if I answer the second question of why also when you see it, and that's the one which requires where the community mobilization and people participation, if it has to happen, there's quite a lot of involvement which required to work on it at the grassroots level, and our staff to stay with them and build a relationship with, so that the trust quotient can be built with the communities, then work on for the sustainability and development. Now, when you're talking about sustainability and development, you have to have certain kind of institutional settings where that can be followed up for the future, so that we can talk about proper sustainability which is brought in and self-reliance in the community. So we have to have a long-term program rather than a short-term one.
How does EFICOR empower people to change their own communities through their own actions and decisions?
Empower is a word sometimes looked at a parochial view. Basically knowing their rights, what are the rights which is required. Yes, that is also required as such when you look into empowering them. But I look at from Jesus' model, wherein with his disciples when he is working over there, what he did was to make them to dream a dream. And with the kingdom dreams, we want the people to dream what the kingdom looks like, so that they dream it first, what they want to achieve as such, and then work from there onwards to say, okay, this is the dream. Now, what's my role in it and my purpose of life in this? What is it? So you bring them that kind of an understanding in their life to say, this is what what we want to achieve. The kingdom they may not know the word kingdom as such, but this is what we achieve, and this is the purpose of life for us to get involved in it, and then empower them with values and principles. Most of the time we do development projects and we leave out the values. What is it we left at the later means? Are we leaving the values of the kingdom to live in harmony? Are we giving that value of sharing their resources with one another? Those are kind of things when I look at empowerment requests. And then definitely the knowledge of their rights, what is there for them to gain it from the government, what are the schemes which are there, what the constitutional rights I have. Those things you give them the knowledge and make them to involved in it. So for me, empowerment is much more holistic in its understanding when I look at it.
And you also run training courses for local churches, helping them to think about development from a biblical point of view. Can you tell us something about those training courses and what kind of things they cover?
EFICOR offers short-term trainings and long-term trainings. There's quite a lot which we do it. Short-term, even for 2 days, a biblical basis for social concern ministries. We offer for the pastors and leaders. We have our own training module. It requires at least 3 days, but normally pastors won't be able to give those 3 days, so we condense it to 2 days and we do the program for them in various locations. We also offer a 3 weeks program, which we used to call it as a community transformation course, basically helping them to understand what are the basic needs required to get involved in it. And a long-term one, which is a 5 weeks, which is 5 months program, which is broken up into 3 phases. And they learn first month, they reflect on their own field, and then come back again for a reflection and learning, and then go back to their own field. So that's for a 5 months program we do it. Now this 3 weeks and the 5 months program, when you look at that, we do have the same biblical basis for social concern, why we do what we do. That one is there. Apart from that, we also look at community mobilization and organization, how that has to be done, because we believe 75% of our work is completed when we mobilize the community for their own development. The 25% is the push what they require. And so we also teach them the theories of development, whatever it is, and we make them to reflect it from a biblical perspective of development, what it is. We also teach them the principles and approaches to development. Various kinds of approaches are there which they can take it up and do. We give them skills on survey methodologies, how to do, using baseline or PRA technique, they call it, and as well as appreciative inquiry. So how to identify the needs and work with the people, we teach them. And then we also include in that project management and the disaster management, how they can do that, the skills, what is required. The third phase of it, first one is more of a concept, second one's a skill, and the third one is more of social issues. What is the climate change, environmental issues, what's HIV and AIDS issues, gender issues, or conflict resolution. So some of the issues, we take it up and make them aware of that and how we can get involved in it. Now this is given in a packed one in the 3 weeks. The same one is elaborated with the hand-on experience where they can learn it in the field in the 5 months training. But at the same time, the same one is being offered in a MA course where they earn a master's degree with a university recognized degree on mission and development practice.
So that we can get a sense of the kind of work that EFICOR does, can you tell us something about the changes that have happened in the Maltose community?
Okay. It always I get excited to talk about the Maltose. I worked among them for almost 7 years from 90 to 92. Earlier to it, there's a mission agency called Friends Missionary Prayer Band who worked among these tribes from 1977 onwards. And they started to, some of the people accepted Christ from 1984 onwards. And that's the time, 1992, they called me to come and work over there in that location for developing a socio-economic development programs. Now the Maltose tribes, they are also called as Pahadias, which mean hill people, and they live on the hills. And the plain, there's another tribe, majority tribe, which is Santal, which they live there. And they exploit the Maltose. Not only them, the Bazar people, they call it, the other landlords, they also exploit these people. And they are a primitive tribe. And actually, Indian government call them as particularly vulnerable tribal group. It's a very primitive. When I went in 1992, I did a survey. At that period of time, the infant mortality rate was 252, and the literacy rate is just less than 1%. People were 11% of the people were affected by tuberculosis. 7% of the people were affected by a disease called visceral leishmaniasis. It's caused by a sandfly, just like a mosquito, and it affects the spleen. And this was about 7% of the people were affected. And then every family, at least one of or two of the members over there, every family 2 times, 2 bouts of malaria they have faced. EFICOR also lost one of our staff for cerebral malaria in the same location. That's about more of the community with whom we worked with. Now, EFICOR, what it did was, when it went and worked over there, before I say it, there's one important thing which we did, it was bring in various mission agencies or Christian organizations to come and work over there, like Emmanuel Hospital Association, Compassion International. And so I brought in there to do a similar kind of work with all the resources, and I provided the coordination part of it, to have similarities and each one know what their roles kind of things to do it. And while EFICOR worked there, the first one what we did was developing a mother tongue literacy on their own language. There was not literacy material earlier. So we started with that, which resulted, at present I can claim, around 37% of the people are literate. Also, with the support of Compassion International, we supported a lot of children, and say about 7,000 to 8,000 children among the community had gone through this, and they are in good position. When I went over there were not even more than 3 people who have passed 10th standard. I can't find a degree holder, but there are now people who have studied law, who have studied nursing and working in different locations. We also did a community health program with our own knowledge, what we have it. EFICOR is not a health specialist as such, but we did a lot of health program over there because of the need. And then later brought in Emmanuel Hospital Association, who took up the work and then started to work on. But we did work under a child survival program. We did work in the whole district, help the government structures to be strengthened. Their staff were trained to take care of the maternal health of a lady as well as the child which is born. Prenatal and postnatal care for the woman has been given also. We also did skills training for their income, for their agriculture development, land leveling, use of slope technology they call it, and also SRI technique to grow rice. You can't believe it, I couldn't believe it also. It's like they used to get about 60 bags of rice. It's about 600 kg of rice where they used to get it. They had an increase which is about 5 times. And earlier it was 600, now they get 3,000 kilos of rice in the same location where they used to get it. So the agriculture development part of it we did. We also did help them to get some training on how to access government schemes. There are laws which are there which they were not aware of, and so I can tell a lot of stories on it. I know one of the person who was trained, there is a Right to Information Act which India has, and as per the Act, the person filed an RTI, Right to Information Act, and asked for details. Does our village deserve a bore well? And if it is not there, who has to be doing it, what to be done, kind of a thing. When he filled up, within a month they came and drilled a bore well for them, and they provided a safe drinking water for them to drink. So those are kind of a work which we take it up and do among the Maltose. And because of that, the infant mortality rate in some of the locations has been brought down to 97 and 133 in different locations. As I told you, the literacy rate has increased to 37% in the whole area. We have controlled the malaria. The TB numbers have come down, as well as the control of Kala-Azar the visual leishmaniasis has happened.
It's a very exciting story.
I can go on.
Are there other communities that you've worked with where you think that's just a great story of the way in which those communities have gone through change?
In a relief operations, one of the challenges which I had it is in a riot situation when you are working there. There was a riot between the Muslims and the Hindus, and even our executive director told me at that time, please don't go. The bishop over there has said even he didn't get a curfew pass to get into the locations. But it's a very challenging one. I said, no, just give us a permission. I'm just going there and I'll do it. Since we worked in an earthquake situation earlier, we know the government officials. I got the curfew passes, got involved into the program. And when we did, the relief materials had to be kept outside of the city, and then we have to bring it into the city. The majority are Hindus. The Muslims are living in a ghettos like in particular locations. So the big truck will bring it into the city, the materials, and from there we have to take it in a 3-wheeler, small vehicle, the materials. The drivers, we have to be careful who are the drivers. They are Muslims, and then take them inside the location where we have to. And everybody is looking at where this material is going, so there is always a risk for our life itself. We did get some threat from them to say, all our relief we are taking it to Muslims, even the Hindus are affected. But that was a challenge. Even our staff, what kind of a cloth you wear, what kind of a color of the cloth that you wear has to be looked at, because certain saffron means Hindus, green means Muslims, so you have to be careful about and doing it. That's another kind of a challenge in a relief situation.
Well, what are your hopes and dreams in your ministry with EFICOR in India?
The hope and the dream which I have is that the church will live the word. What I mean by it will, while it stands firm for preaching the gospel, I'm looking at the church will stand along with the community for their own justice and be a compassionate community which will care for the poor and the needy. That's the first one which I'm hoping and dreaming that the church will come back and do that. The second one I want to see it is to see the communities, they exhibit the kingdom values in their lives and will experience the shalom in its fullness. Uh, that's the one which I'm hoping that the communities will come through and that His kingdom be established. As an organization, when I see it, our vision is that we work towards a just, responsible, and compassionate society. And so I'm looking at the haves, those rich people, that they will also have a responsible living and show the compassion in their life in meeting the needs of the people. So that's my hope and my dream.
What are the greatest challenges facing the church today?
The rising of the fundamentalism is a threat which faces the church. I accept it. But then the challenge for the church is to be missional in its understanding. That is not only preaching but also living the gospel and be a model for others. All the people everywhere are looking at. Even one of our prime minister had asked our people, what you do? And they said, see, we have our hospitals, we have schools. But he said, yeah, those are all from the olden times, but what you do now, like when they ask, because the church has become more conservative in preaching the gospel, but not living the gospel out. Earlier, the church is seen as a place of compassion. Even in our movies, they used to show that when a person doesn't want a child, they go and leave it in a church, in the front of the church. And it was looked as a caring community. But I think over the period it has lost it. And we have to redeem that back again. That's a challenge which is coming up. There's also a disintegration of family values in our society. And church has a big challenge and a role to play in building families. There's also a widening gap between the rich and the poor. And church has a role. That's a big challenge which church has to play in it. In India, also, I've seen a lot of conflicts which are rising between caste or race or language-speaking groups, gender violence. So there's quite a lot of conflicts, and church is looked at as a community who brings in other peacemakers. I think that church can redeem those things back and do it. Those are challenges which I see it.
What social and ethical issues should the church be addressing today?
Chris Wright, who was in Lausanne conference, he said, even though the fundamentalism rising up a thing which is a challenge which you face and we have to address, but the ethical issues, if you have to talk about it, it is basically, it has to be addressed within the church at present. There should be a lot of accountability, transparency, and stewardship. And Chris Wright, when he was speaking over there, he said that the church should show in its character humility, integrity, and simplicity. And he coined it in a way that the first letter comes at humility with H, integrity with I, and simplicity with the S. His character, Christ's character of that, has to be addressed within first before we talk about others. There's a lot of issues on social issues, basically a responsible living which has to be done at this time, taking into account the issues of carbon emission which is happening. Delhi is considered as the worst polluted city in the world, and I live in that. And we are looking for how we can have a responsible living. And also there should be equality. We have a caste system which is there, which exists even within the church. And I think church should address that very strongly. Because of that, we have in India, when you look into the male-female ratio, the gap is widening up because of our understanding of the women. And that has to be addressed within the church. There is a dowry. Dowry is something which they give. The bride has to pay for the bridegroom during the wedding. And the understanding of it all has to change within the church itself on gender issues. There are casteism, there are corruptions, there are discriminations on various issues. Those are some of the kind of social issues I think the church should address at this time.
What challenges do you face in ministry today?
We need a lot of support from the churches when we are working along with. EFICOR is an NGO. We may do a project and we move off. But then church is an institution which may remain there, which can continue with the work in the location. So we are looking at how the church can partner with and do the work. And that's one challenge which we face. The second one is on the place wherever we are working is inaccessible areas. And also there are locations where there are insurgent movements which are happening in different locations. So when you're working there in that place, you have to walk in a thin line. Either if you're on the other side, you are with the government, then you are against the insurgent groups, like so they can do any harm to you. And if you lean towards the other side, you are against the law and you can be caught in it. So you have to balance the whole work when you are taking up and doing it, which is very critical at this moment, both sides to balance. The government has also come out with a lot of stringent laws pertaining to the work of the NGOs. And we have to adapt to those kind of laws and ensure those fulfillment while we are working. There's no political intervention, no political actions should the NGOs be involved. Those are kind of things which are bringing in. And when you're doing a rights for approach, when we take it up and do it, it can be construed as political in its nature. So we have to be very careful. And that's a challenge which we have it from. Looking into the funding position, EFICOR is receiving a lot of funds from outside the country. And they say that India is a developed country. India is sending rockets to Mars. Why we should support us? So that's a big challenge. But I also have a question for the West on that one. Don't support India. This is what I used to say. I'd say that, are you supporting India or are you working with the poor? If you are ignoring India, then statistics, according to the economics website, economics.com, it says 42.5% of the malnourished children in the world live in India. So you ignore them. The other side of it, around 29.5% of the world poor live in India. So you will ignore them. So you have to look at it from that perspective rather than political of India as such, but the poor, which we have to look at it. So that's a big challenge for us. How to project the need for us to work over here. There is also a government has come out with the corporate social responsibility law with the corporate sectors to give it for corporate social responsibility. And it's a challenge for EFICOR to get access to those funds to get involved in the work. So those are some of the challenges which you face. Rising up of fundamentalism is also because you are looked as a Christian organization. Our name itself, Evangelical, they think we are involved in evangelism and the social concern is not understood as such. So that's a big challenge also we face wherever we are working.
What is the mission of the church and how should the church pursue this mission today?
The mission of the church is holistic in nature. While it continues to work on the proclamation of the gospel, it should also be involved in the deed part of it, what we call it as a social responsibility or social concern. In this, it should be a caring community, providing counseling and taking care of their physical needs, what they have, in whatever way they could. And it should be a voice of the poor in advocating on the issues of the poor and influence policies of the government and provide proper teaching in the church on the holistic nature of the church. They should also work along with and facilitate the communities to take up the development work to transform their own community rather than exercising some kind of a dependability from the people. The church should work towards empowering them and take it up and do it. So for me, when I see it, the mission should be holistic in its nature.
How do you define integral mission?
I believe in the understanding of the integral mission, but I have reservations on using various terminologies. Mission is mission, and it is holistic in its understanding. Earlier it's called as holistic mission, transformation mission, and then now an integral mission. When I take it up to the pastors and leaders to explain to them itself is a big task. So I don't want to look at as integral mission, but mission as holistic in its nature. Because then otherwise what happens, I go and tell someone else, who are you? Like that they ask, I'm Kennedy, I work with EFICOR. What EFICOR does? So I said them that we take up development work, relief operation. Oh, you do holistic mission. Now, what happened is the understanding of holistic mission is that if at all you are doing social concern ministry, it's called as holistic mission. Now we are bringing in another intervention or a word, integral mission. Now I have to go and explain to them, then over the period that will become, because this is basically being done by the NGOs. And so the church looks at, okay, this what they are doing, they are calling it as integral mission. But for me, mission, where you have to proclaim the gospel, because that's what God has asked us to do. And you are involved in social concern ministries because that's the nature of God itself. He's a God of justice. And he says in Isaiah chapter 30 verse 18, he responds to them with compassion, for he is a God of justice. A God whose heart filled with justice flows with compassion. So it's a character of God itself when you see it. It's there. And he teaches and expects us to be involved in it. So we can't segregate anything. This is what it is. This is what it is. Mission is holistic in its understanding. And I don't do social concern as a means to evangelize the people or expect something which has to happen. I proclaim because they need salvation. I do the social concern because there is injustice being done to them and we have to do justice to them. So that's how I look at the integral mission as mission.
What do you think majority world Christians can teach Western Christians today?
The majority Christians, when they are looking into the Bible, I think it's a different Bible. Sometime back I have seen it. If you are in the top of it, when you read the Bible, you think about all the provisions which God has given you, and you want to thank God for the peace and tranquility which He has given to you as such. But if you are in the bottom of the pyramid, where they are the poor, and when you read it, it actually transforms you and makes you to rejoice and think something else different. So I think the majority world can have a different kind of a theological reflections which we can provide to the West, learn from the context in which we see God, who He is. And so that's the one which He can do it. They can also give you models for responsible living. It's not only the West. Definitely the majority world shows how we can care for the people. And I've seen one small village when we did a workshop on integral mission. A old lady put up her hand and said, I want to, because we were asking people to give money for a leprosy colony to help. And this old lady put her hand up and said, I'll give 2 rupees worth of tomatoes. Now 2 rupees, 65 rupees is $1. So you can calculate how much is 2 rupees. A small penny of it, maybe 1 or 2 cents, we can talk about it. And the 2-cent money she wants to buy tomato and give. And everyone is saying, don't give. And they said, why? Because we came to know later, she's a widow who get 50 rupees as a widow pension, which is less than $1 per month. And she begs in the market for her living. And she feels that I should give someone else whom she thinks they are poor. From her poverty, she was giving it. And I think we have so much of model in care and giving part of it which we can do it. Models for involvement, models for transformations. I think we have a great experience in doing it, which the world can learn, which the West can learn from us.
Kennedy Dhanabalan, thank you for joining us at the Global Church Project. The Global Church Project is located at www.global.org.au. theglobalchurchproject.com. On our website, you'll find a wide range of interviews and resources for colleges, universities, and churches. I look forward to your company next time. From me, goodbye.